Anyway, I'm here still fighting the fight 3.5 years later. Over there in the not-so-great Britain, they're also teaching chest compressions for opiate overdose to laypersons. Well, this is wrong, 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 wrong. There's hundreds of causes of respiratory emergency, and they all look similar to opiate overdose. It's you turn blue, you go unconscious, you die, respiratory failure. Your heart will still beat for a minute, but it's going to stop because your brain is brain dead. You're brain dead, lack of oxygen. So a person on any drug overdose, poisoning, you know, asthma, bronchitis, diabetic coma, a stroke, an allergy to peanuts or a bee sting or 1,000 different things. That's called a respiratory emergency. And in a respiratory emergency, you supply rescue breathing, respiratory assist. 1 out of 6 patients admitted to the hospital is a respiratory emergency patient. You don't give them chest compressions only. Chest compressions only is for a sudden witnessed cardiac arrest because your blood is still oxygenated. In a respiratory emergency, your blood is becoming toxic. It's building up with a carbon dioxide excess, lactic acid buildup, high or low sugar content, high potassium, high calcium. All these things are causing your blood system to become toxic. It's because of lack of oxygen. Your lungs aren't working. You're in a respiratory depression or respiratory insufficiency. This is basic first aid knowledge. A person drowns. What's the cause of death? Well, I guess you stop breathing. You had a person when they're near drowning, you pull them out of the water. The CPR guidelines say give 20 breaths. Well, a person should wake up in 7. And you never give chest compressions to a beating heart. That's murder. You're going to give them a dysarrhythmia, break a rib, puncture a lung, 100 different things you're going to do to the poor bloody bugger that needs respiratory assist only. Chest compressions does not supply oxygen to the bloodstream. This is how the lungs work and the blood system. You have 2 blood systems. It's called the arterial, which carries pink oxygenated blood through your body, keeping every cell, tissue, and organ alive. This oxygen delivery through your through your arterial blood system. And your venous blood system takes the used up red blood cells that have been depleted of oxygen and pushes it through your right side of your chest in your heart. And the right side of your heart pushes this unoxygenated blood into your lungs, which goes to the left side of your heart, and this pumps the oxygenated blood all through your body. A person's pallor is controlled by this oxygenated blood. Turn your hands upside down and along the heel. You'll see it's pink. Rub your thumb across the heel between your wrist and your baby finger. You'll notice, see, that's all blood. There's blood running through just under your skin. That's pink oxygenated blood. Public health in this province is teaching the signs and symptoms of an opiate overdose. Can't wake the person up. That's a coma. Their heart is beating. Breathing is slow, erratic, or has stopped. That's a respiratory emergency. Deep snoring or gurgling sounds, that's Cheyne-Stokes respiration. Your heart's beating. Fingernails or lips are blue or purple, that's cyanosis. Your heart's beating. Pinpoint pupils, that's meiosis. Your heart's beating. And then they also teach the recovery position. A patient could die in a respiratory emergency any second. So You better be making sure that they're awake and breathing on their own before you put them in a recovery position. This is the signs of cardiac arrest. There's no power. The patient will appear gray. He'll appear dead. His heart's not beating. Pupils are dilated. They're huge because the heart's not beating. They'll have what they call agonal gasping sounds, which sounds like this. Every 10-15 seconds. That proves there's no heartbeat. And the patient may have seizures. This is all signs of cardiac arrest when you give full CPR. The CPR guidelines changed in 2010 for a lay responder witnessing a sudden witnessed cardiac arrest only, because the blood is still oxygenated. Otherwise, you know, there's an old saying, it's as old as the hills. Let's get some air. You look a little green around the gills. And Patty, now completely blew around the gills, slid quietly under the table, and everyone pretended not to notice. Well, if you're blue, your heart's beating, don't give them chest compressions, you're gonna kill them. They've been teaching this since August 2011. I took this, was within the first 20 people taking this training. I told the nurses, hey, that's contraindicated. I asked them, where's the proof of chest compressions for a respiratory emergency? The lies just get bigger and bigger and bigger. You go to any library, medical library, there is no medical textbook anywhere that'll say give chest compressions to a respiratory emergency patient. It's murder, out and out murder. This is state sponsored. I'm on LinkedIn. Stephen Harper, our Prime Minister's office, has looked at my LinkedIn page. Paul Martin, he was a past Prime Minister of this country. His office has looked at my LinkedIn page. Tim Hudak, Conservative leader of Ontario, he's looked at my LinkedIn page. I found out who wrote this medical directive. It's Dr. Laurie Morrison. She wrote the CPR guidelines on poisoning in 2011. She was co-chair of the American Heart Association guidelines and the International Liaison Committee on Resuscitation, which states verbatim, evidence from the studies assessing other endpoints, efficiency of naloxone, as well as animal studies, support the use of assisted ventilation before giving naloxone in an opioid poison patient with severe cardiopulmonary toxicity. Under treatment recommendations, there is insufficient clinical evidence to suggest any change to cardiac arrest resuscitation treatment algorithms for patients with cardiac arrest caused by opioids. In adults with severe cardiovascular toxicity caused by opioids, ventilation should be assisted using a bag mask followed by naloxone and tracheal intubation if there is no response to naloxone. Well, a bag mask or tracheal intubation is the same thing as rescue breathing for a lay person. Unfortunately, what's happening, because they're publishing this in the newspapers, in the radios, on the internet, is people are showing up in hospitals with complications from chest compressions they were never to receive in the first place. See, children don't suffer cardiac arrest. They die mainly from respiratory emergencies. They die from choking, drowning, poisoning. In this province of Ontario, there's 50,000 poisonings per year, mostly children. Here's the Canadian Red Cross. Compressions-only CPR should not be used when the oxygen in the victim's body has likely been used up. such as with drowning victim or any respiratory emergency, may have caused a cardiac arrest. That's what happens. You die, respiratory arrest. Then your heart will still beat for a minute, but then it's going to stop because you're brain dead. They're teaching this in not so great Britain. In October 15th or something like that, your government's going to be pushing this kind of protocol all over the islands. So be aware and stop killing people. This is what a thing that the governments do around the world. There's a term for it. It's called agnotology. Agnotology is the study of culturally induced ignorance or doubt, particularly the publications of inaccurate or misleading medical scientific data. Agnotology focuses on the deliberate fomenting of ignorance or doubt in society. Any 10-year-old should know about respiratory emergencies. They teach this in grade 6, in grade 8, and then again in high school about how the heart and lungs work. It's basic first aid knowledge, simple logic, respiratory emergency. What does that mean?
So my question to you is, you gave a really, really good presentation about this issue. Is, given all this information out there, what can people do to stop this?
Well, see, I've talked to all these doctors and nurses. I've talked to the chief medical officer of Public Health Toronto, Dr. David McEwen. I've talked to his chief associate. I've talked to them all in person. They're making themselves sick. These are nurses and doctors. They know it's wrong. They know they're killing people, yet it persists. Phone them up. It's happening all across this province. They're teaching it in Peterborough. There's a web video, YouTube video put up by Waterloo Regional Crime Prevention Council called Eyes Wide Open. Joe, he states in it, just watch that video, YouTube, Eyes Wide Open, Waterloo Regional Crime Prevention. I've talked to them all. Dr. Michael Parkinson and Christine Sadler. She's the CEO. They know it's wrong. They know it's murder. See, it starts off, Joe says, I come home. My friend, he was completely blue. I didn't know what to do. I saw death for the first time. So he started giving him chest compressions, and it didn't seem to do much good, Joe said. Well, correctamundo. So Joe went running around the apartment trying to remember where he left his naloxone, and he gave him his naloxone, and his best friend, his childhood friend, lived through this. See, naloxone only works for opioids. Any other respiratory emergency, any other toxin in your body, it doesn't do a damn thing. People leave their naloxone elsewhere 20% of the time, and naloxone can be ineffective against time-release, long-acting, large ingestions, buprenorphine. It doesn't work against. That's an opiate agonist. So, people, wake up. Somebody blue? That means they're dying, lack of oxygen. Give them rescue breathing. Simple first aid knowledge. No one stops it. Don't know why. They're killing your children. So, smarten up. And I know, the people I know that have been killed with this, 3 of them never used a drug in their life. 2 of them were choking victims. 1 of them was a diabetic, 14-year-old diabetic coma patient. Well, in all those patients, they need air, not chest compressions.
Okay, thank you very much. Where can they find more info on this before we end the show?
Yeah, just Google this up. Oh, you can Google my Twitter. It's at Gary CPR, or this live human study It's right on the internet. It's CJPH 2013 semicolon 104 in brackets 3 colon e200-4. That's for the Canadian Journal of Public Health 2013 volume 104 issue 3 pages 200 to 4. It's all up there for you to have a little gander at all the CPR guidelines. It's never changed, never will change for a respiratory emergency.
Okay, thank you very much. Hello everyone, I would like to welcome you all to the Daily Grr. Today is the day after St. Patrick's